The world's getting more expensive and fast. Grocery prices, rent, utilities, everything is rising. But the real challenge is the price of assets like stocks and homes. They continue to climb and far outpace the increase in wages. Historically, this has happened dozens of times throughout history, and the results are never good. In this episode of Around the Block, we're going to show you what's really causing the inflation crisis, what's happening behind the scenes with Bitcoin. We'll dive into the question everyone's asking, is this the end of the Bitcoin cycle? And where the price is going in 2026. All this and more on this episode of Around the Block.
As I said before, keep your eye on one thing and one thing only, how much government is spending. Because that's the true tax. Every budget is balanced. There is no such thing as an unbalanced federal budget. You're paying for it. If you're not paying for it through it in the form of explicit taxes, you're paying for it indirectly in the form of inflation or in the form of borrowing.
Milton Friedman, one of the most famous and reputable economists of the 20th century, explains it perfectly. He explains how the citizens, which is us, are always paying for it, whether it is through taxes or the hidden tax, inflation. Most people see inflation in the goods or services they purchase. They see their grocery bills rising, their utility bills rising. However, there's a flip side of this, which creates two classes of people, those who own assets and those who don't. Because inflation also manifests in assets. People call that asset appreciation, which is sometimes a good thing. The challenge is that if the assets rise too quickly against wages, it prices people out of those assets. For example, the age of the first-time homebuyer has increased to an average of 40 years old. The American dream was always to own your own home, but because the assets are inflating so quickly compared to wages, that is becoming impossible. To really highlight this point, I want you to hear how much your wage had to increase to afford the average home in just the past 4 years.
Housing market has become so unaffordable for most Americans over the past 4 years, and I want to show you what happened. In February of 2020, the average house in this country was $275,000. If you put a 10% down payment and got a 3.52% interest rate, your principal and interest was $1,114 plus $500 for property tax and insurance, puts your payment out the door at $1,614. The average American only needed about $50,000 in a salary with very little debt to qualify for the average home in America. Now let's fast forward to current day, February 2024. Home prices have shot up to $415,000, 10% down payment. Interest rates are 6.75%, $2,423 principal and interest, $700 for property tax and homeowners insurance. Now you're looking at $3,123. So now you need about $95,000 to qualify if you have very little debt. So if you look at the down payments over the year, it's gone up only about $14,000, $15,000, which is a lot, but also doable in 4 years. But what really pinched Americans is how many individuals went from $50,000 to almost $100,000 in salary in just 4 years. That's why so many Americans can't afford a home right now.
It's of course not realistic to expect salaries to double in 4 years. However, you essentially need to make double to afford a home, which is creating an affordability crisis. I think the powers that be understand that people don't understand inflation. If they tax you more, you're going to be upset. You're going to lobby against it. However, if they just inflate the currency, they are essentially doing the same thing, getting the money they want and need without you getting as upset. And sadly, if you study history, this has happened dozens of times over the past 2,000 years and has always led to a major problem. When there is no capped supply on the money, powerful people will unfortunately put us in bad situations. This is not Republican, Democrat. This is both sides alike. Bitcoin, on the other hand, has a fixed supply. It is a mathematical gift to humanity, in my opinion. The CEO of BlackRock, Larry Fink, I believe understands this. And although he has a lot of power and a ton of money, he still gets that this is the opportunity of a lifetime. And he says in this quote, "I see a big use case for Bitcoin. This is the one thing I get excited about." And it's not just Larry Fink. Michael Saylor talks about how he met with the major banks. Saylor explains he sat down with the CEO of Bank of America and explained, "You're missing a massive opportunity, and you personally should intervene." And he did. Bank of America is one of the major banks to now be willing to offer Bitcoin-based loans, with many more following suit. Another business leader, Peter Thiel, says Bitcoin is the one asset I most strongly believe in. it could change the world. What's so interesting to me is where people are getting their advice from. They're listening to their broke brother-in-law. They're listening to some random person writing for the Wall Street Journal instead of listening to some of the largest financial giants in the world. Just like you wouldn't take advice from an overweight personal trainer, why are you taking advice from broke people on where monetary policy is going? What investments should be made in the future? It doesn't make any sense. Look at what the smart financial minds are saying. This was a graphic put out by Bank of America showing the most important technological disruptions of the past 1,000 years. You've got things like the printing press, the telescope, the light bulb, the World Wide Web, social media, the iPhone, and Bitcoin is higher than all of them. There should be no surprise at this point that Bitcoin will continue to rally higher on the long time horizon. On a short time horizon, anything can happen. I believe Bitcoin's a terrible store of value on a very short time horizon. But if you have years, decades, or you're thinking even longer than that for your kids or your kids' kids, this, I believe, is the best form of money. People always seem to look at the yearly highs of Bitcoin. However, Simply Bitcoin put out this post that I thought was genius, showing you should look at the yearly lows. Back in 2015, Bitcoin hit a yearly low of $185. Fast forward 5 years to 2020, Bitcoin's yearly low was $5,000. In 2025, Bitcoin's yearly low was $75,000. Do you see the trend here? If you're enjoying this content and you're a business leader or an accredited investor looking to understand crypto better, you're ready to take the leap, master the world of cryptocurrency so you can earn yield on your assets that Wall Street couldn't dream of, and begin to understand where the undervalued gems are and how you can leverage crypto for yourself or your business, then I invite you to apply for our DeFi Accelerator program. It's a 6-week program where we can take you from a novice to an absolute pro, and we have dozens of high-quality business leaders in there. So if that's interesting to you, scroll down below, schedule a call with me or my team, and I look forward to chatting with you soon. Let's get back to the video. There's a chart that gets passed around a lot showing that Bitcoin's price and global liquidity line up nearly perfectly with a slight lag. Now, currently, Bitcoin's price is so decoupled from global liquidity that only 2 things are likely happening. One is that this is an opportunity of a lifetime and we are going to catch up in a massive way to global liquidity. Or 2, this is the end and there is no in between. At least that's what this influencer thinks. Now, I don't believe it's black and white like that, but I do think we should question whether this is the end of the cycle and we're going to have to wait 12 to 18 months to see new all-time highs. Or is this a bear trap and we're about to explode upward? And here's something I think we must take into account. It's the options market. There was a ton of options set to expire on December 19th. The time of this recording, it's December 21st. There is the floodgate, as they're calling it, happening the day after Christmas when $287 million of options expire. I expect high volatility during this time frame. And I think we're basically going to chop up or down a little bit until we get past this event. I've been in cryptocurrency for 9 years, and I have never seen the sides so divided. We've got one side of the table saying we are going squarely into the bear market. They believe the 4-year cycle will play out exactly as it has in the past. On the other side, people are saying this time is different, and we are on our road to 150,000 and beyond. I'm curious, put in the comments, where do you think we are? Are we going to a bear market, or are we about to explode upward? And while you're thinking through that, let's look at some of the big Bitcoin 2026 price predictions.
I think crypto prices are beginning to actually recover. That's why I think Bitcoin can double from here by the end of January. Now, many people don't expect it because of the 4-year cycle. And that's going to be the big question. If Bitcoin breaks 125 in January, there is no 4-year cycle.
Tom Lee, Raoul Pal, Michael Saylor, all remaining very bullish on Bitcoin's price in 2026, saying that the 4-year cycle is really the business cycle, and we are about to enter the next leg up in the business cycle, so therefore Bitcoin will come along for the ride. I think looking at other assets and where money could flow from is also helpful when predicting the price. Gold is sitting at an all-time high, as is silver, and between those two, there's almost $35 trillion worth of value sitting in these precious metals. If we do see the business cycle have the next leg up, as interest rates come down, I think you'll see a risk-on approach to asset allocation in which people will begin to allocate some of the profits they have in gold and silver into Bitcoin. And since Bitcoin's market cap is under 2 trillion, it's not going to take much of that money to move the market drastically. So where do you think the Bitcoin price is going in 2026? Drop your comments below. I'd love to hear your prediction and more importantly, why you believe that. And if you've enjoyed this episode of Around the Block, don't forget to like and subscribe because we'll be dropping more quality information every single week so you can stay ahead of the curve in crypto.